Are you curious about one of the world's most complex and contested conflicts?
Israeli police are closely monitoring Temple Mount in Jerusalem ahead of the Eid al-Adha Muslim holiday. Palestinians were arrested for raising Hamas flags at the holy site, and Muslims and is a frequent target of Palestinian incitement of violence. Temple Mount will reopen for non-Muslims.
The Temple Mount has been at the center of conflict between Jews, Muslims, and Christians for centuries. We'll explore its historical significance and the prophetic implications of its return to Jewish control. Join us on a deep dive into the mysteries of the Temple Mount and discover what it means for the future of Jerusalem and the world. The Temple Mount is an important site for both Palestinians and Arabs who seek to control this sacred spot and prevent Jews from returning. They have made significant progress towards achieving this aim over time. However, the United Nations passed a resolution in 2020 that refers to the temple as Harama al-Sharif in Arabic. Tensions around the Temple Mount remain high, as evidenced by an incident involving Israel's Minister of National Security, Itamar Ben-Gvir. During his brief 50-minute stay, he moved around silently. However, Palestinian officials falsely accused him of assaulting the Temple Mount. This visit drew condemnation from all around the world, including friendly nations. Despite the challenges, the Temple Mount is still accessible to the public. However, only Muslims are allowed to pray there. In 2022, there was a significant increase in Jewish visits, with 51,483 Jews visiting the Temple Mount, indicating a 50s increase over the previous year. This shows the increased desire of Jews to connect with this holy site. Unfortunately, Jewish visits to the Temple Mount continue to face limitations. In mid-January, Israeli authorities detained 2 Jewish visitors who raised their flag and performed the national anthem. They were imprisoned for 5 hours, illustrating non-Muslim tourists' limited freedom of expression. In light of these concerns, Christians around the world must support Israel's desire to visit and pray on the Temple Mount. Let us continue to pray for peace in Jerusalem, recognizing the significance of this holy site for people of all religions. Jordan is the custodian of Jerusalem's Muslim and Christian holy sites, including the Temple Mount and the Western Wall. According to Jordan, they want ownership of these sites to remove Jewish ties to them. If they had power, they could prohibit Jews from accessing the Temple Mount and worshiping at the Western Wall. This may seem strange, but consider Jordanian Prime Minister Bashar al-Kawani's remarks in which he welcomed people who threw stones at Jewish services at the Western Wall. The conflict over the Temple Mount is complex, and it remains a hotly contested and dangerous place. Palestinian speakers often argue for the Temple Mount's freedom, highlighting the spiritual war for its possession. The Temple Mount is referred to in Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 40, as God's sacred mountain where the entire house of Israel is to serve him. That God told Abraham to sacrifice his son Isaac about 4,000 years ago. King David purchased this land to build an altar and avoid God's punishment. Later, King Solomon built the first temple on the site, followed by the second. The aspirations of Islam are also significant. Islam seeks to gain control of the entire Temple Mount. Muslims believe that the presence of praying Jews and Christians on the Temple Mount is an insult to their faith, leading many to believe that only Muslims should be allowed to pray there. Isaiah chapter 56, verse 7 begins the narration. According to this verse, God wants his holy mountain, the Temple Mount, to be a house of prayer for all nations. However, Satan is behind the conflict, aiming to hinder God's intentions for Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. Recognizing the prophecies in the Bible, he fuels hatred towards Israel and the Jewish people, contributing to the fierce struggle over Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. The Muslims built the Dome of the Rock on the Temple Mount, where the first and second temples once stood in 691 AD. It's worth noting that this structure wasn't always a mosque. The Al-Aqsa Mosque was constructed on the Temple Mount's southern side 20 years later. God has no son is one of the inscriptions on the Dome of the Rock, also known as the Golden Dome of the Rock Mosque. reflecting a doctrinal divide between Islam and Christianity. Following the 1967 Six-Day War, Israel regained control of all of Jerusalem, despite international condemnation. After Jordan's eviction from East Jerusalem, Israel granted the Islamic Waqf administrative powers over the Temple Mount. This indicates that at the time, it was not yet God's timing for Israel to gain total authority over the Temple Mount. The Temple Mount is God's preferred location for meeting with His people. This mountain is known in Hebrew as the Mountain of the House and represents the temple as God's abode. Psalm 132 mentions Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, emphasizing that the Lord has chosen Zion as His ultimate resting place, a home He has long desired. Many people are interested in the idea of a third temple in Jerusalem. The concluding chapters of the book of Ezekiel appear to hint at the existence of another temple. Based on biblical allusions, however, it is unknown when this temple will be constructed. It may not happen until the Kingdom of Peace is established. Currently, there are mosques on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. While there is sufficient room for a temple, the Arabs who rule the region are unlikely to permit its construction. Divine intervention may be required to demolish these mosques in the near future, potentially by a natural calamity, such as an earthquake. Another possibility is the rise of a leader like the Antichrist or his false prophet, who may suggest an enticing concept that Muslims may still accept the construction of a temple beside their mosques. Another notion is prompted by the detailed depiction of the temple in Ezekiel chapters 40 through 48. Some say it is a representation of the New Jerusalem mentioned in Revelation chapter 21. This New Jerusalem is ready to fall from heaven and may represent the church. In 1 Corinthians chapter 3 verse 16 and 1 Corinthians chapter 6 verse 19, believers are referred to as the temple of the living God. However, it is essential to remember that Jesus has already made the ultimate sacrifice by sacrificing His life and shedding His blood. Sacrifices are made at the temple described in Ezekiel's account. Nevertheless, as highlighted in Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 12, Jesus' sacrifice has resulted in permanent salvation. As stated in verse 26, His sacrifice has also eradicated sin. Some say that we should not take the temple's description literally. Instead, some believe it references Jesus' sacrifice. However, I am skeptical about this viewpoint. Why is such a detailed account provided? Ezekiel saw things that way and was told to tell the house of Israel all he saw. While we may not need to know exactly how everything will play out or what will happen on the Temple Mount, God's plan may differ from our understanding. He rules, and everything happens for a reason. As we march towards the new heaven, new earth, and new Jerusalem in the framework of Jesus' second coming and rule, the Bible states that on His second coming, Jesus would come to the Mount of Olives and build His kingdom of peace and righteousness, governing from Jerusalem. Jerusalem, not New York City or any other city, will be the world center in that future age. Many nations will joyfully go up to the Lord's mountain and the home of Jacob's God. He will teach us His ways there, and we shall follow in His footsteps, as stated in Isaiah chapter 2, verse 3. What are your thoughts on the dome's demolition? Will there ever be peace on this land? And will there be a third temple? Thank you for watching. We appreciate your support and would love for you to subscribe to our channel for more exciting content. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to check out our latest video on the left and a recommended video on the right. We hope you have a wonderful day